These are all out of Minnesota, just Minnesota. I say, why don't you talk about that more? Because people don't know. Do you want to live with these people?
So President Trump spoke for an hour and 45 minutes today from the podium there in the White House on the one-year anniversary of his inauguration. And the very first thing that he did, spent 12 minutes. You saw it there going one by one, highlighting the administration's efforts to get rid of criminals, illegal aliens living in the U.S. Full panel here with me now. Julia Manchester is the White House reporter for The Hill. Lindsey Granger, co-host of Rising on the Hill, doing double duty for us. And Jessica Anderson, former official in the first Trump administration, back with us tonight. Ladies, hello. Thanks for being here. Nice to see you. Julia was in the room today.
I know.
Love that.
With the president. And, Julia, I want to start there because it was basically at about this time last night where Trump put out a truth saying, stop talking, trying to reframe the argument basically not about ICE, but about the criminals in Minneapolis. And what did he do today? He walked right up to the podium and it was story time. This one, that one. And he tried to get his administration back on message there. What was your perspective being in the room?
You know, it was interesting seeing him go through dozens of those pictures, showing them right to the camera. I think what President Trump is doing there is trying to rely on a campaign tactic he's relied on before, and that is focusing on law and order and bringing down crime and tying it to this issue of ICE in Minnesota. Now, I thought it was fascinating how the president did say at one point, look, ICE is going to make some mistakes. They're dealing with rough people. So maybe acknowledging that not everything has been perfect with these ICE operations. Maybe some would say it's been, more than not perfect. But I think President Trump really trying to drive home that message to Americans, to voters, that this is about bringing down law and order. It's about bringing forth law and order, immigration, et cetera. It's worked for him in the past. Unclear whether it's going to work here, though.
Is it the messaging or the policy or both?
Well, I think it's both. And the reason it was a successful campaign tactic is because what the American people want. They want safety and security in our neighborhoods. And so when the president can go up and tout the successes and saying, look, we are bringing not only the southern border under control, but we're going after the gangs. We're going after the drugs. We're working in partnership with some blue cities like what he's done in Memphis. Not every blue city is saying, get Trump out of here, get the feds out of here. A lot are actually working in cooperation to get that crime down. And I think that's what he needs to lean on as he has followed through on that promise now 1 year post-inauguration.
The president says, do you want to live with these people?
Right. I think
the response would be?
I mean, both things can be true. A lot of people criticize Biden's handling of immigration policy in this country, and that was a real pushback. I think that when you look at the latest Quinnipiac poll that shows 57% of people disagree with the way that ICE is enforcing immigration, then that is problematic. When you see podcasters like Joe Rogan, whether they matter or not, I mean, he's credited with being that last run stretch for President Trump's election bid and helping him get over the finish line. He's criticizing it. So when you have the average American that did want to do more than Biden did, but doesn't want to go this far, well, then the president has a problem because an American citizen died.
The president also heading over to Davos, Julia. He should be leaving the White House in a couple hours from now. And when he goes over there, look, I've been to Davos. Normally it's like the elite of the elite. And I've covered it. And, it's about the economy and the this and the that. No. This is all about Greenland. This year, right? And the president is flying over there. He's going to be in the backyard of European leaders. And you asked him today in the room about a couple of them.
Right. I asked him if he had spoken with Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron since he tweeted some criticism of the UK and a deal they made regarding the Chagos Islands and how it relates to his deal on Greenland or agreement on Greenland. And then also a screenshot of what appeared to be a private conversation with Emmanuel Macron. He said he had not spoken with them, but that he has a good relationship with both of them. He said, when I'm not around, maybe they're a little rough about me. But he said overall he has a good relationship with them. Later on in the briefing, though, I thought it was fascinating when he was asked, would he go to an emergency G7 meeting that Macron, in that same screenshot, had proposed. And he said, no, I wouldn't want to go there. It seems that Trump isn't as concerned about Macron now because Macron is out of office next year and is term limited. But overall, lots of questions as to, I think, what Davos means really for the future of NATO as this question of Greenland really emerges.
You know who's at Davos? Gavin Newsom. And here is the governor of California earlier today.
I can't take this complicity. People rolling over. I should have brought a bunch of knee pads for all the world leaders. I mean, handing out crowns and this is pathetic. Nobel Prizes that are being given away. I mean, it's just pathetic.
All right, you guys were chuckling there. Is it pathetic or powerful?
Okay, he's in campaign mode, so everybody says, yeah. That's
I'm thinking,
mode.
why is he even there?
Yeah, that's kind of random.
Like,
I guess the argument would be like California is one of the fourth or fifth or sixth biggest economies in the world. I'm not saying it's justified. But
I mean, Trump's fixation on Greenland could do permanent damage to our allies. When you see people in uniform from Europe all over Greenland, that's an odd sight to see when this is not our adversary. And we've seen Trump joke around about places like Canada, but then threaten to tax them and make it uncomfortable. But now we're seeing him very forcefully say he wants to take over Greenland, even suggesting he might pay the people there to override the government. And I think that all these are not things that we should do when we already have an agreement in place with Greenland that allows us to put actual troops in place there if we need to and protect ourselves around their water. We don't have to take over the whole country.
The thing about Trump, though, is it's not just about Greenland, right? This is an entire, he sees the globe as this chess pieces. This is about securing and making sure China and Russia don't get Greenland. And that is good for everyone. So these memes of this is Trump versus Europe, I don't actually think they're fair to the reality that this is something that will help with global peace if he can get a deal done that makes sense for the people in Greenland and for America's interests.
Does that, what Newsom said there, does that play?
I don't think that plays. I think an average normal American looks at it and is like, why is the governor of California that still hasn't built homes in Southern California, Malibu, after the ravishing fires over a year ago? Right. Why is he not taking care of California and instead jetting off to Davos? That's the role of the president, to represent all of the United States.
There are a lot of European leaders that are saying, okay, well, are we in imperialism again? What's happening here? So there are real questions. Maybe Gavin Newsom's not the messenger that needs to be relaying this message, but it's a real message.
Good thing we have elections.
Well, look, what I find fascinating is talking to a number of sources today, asking them what do they expect when President Trump goes to Davos. They did mention that both sides of this debate over Greenland do realize that Russia has been trying to break apart that transatlantic alliance.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.